liberals will say, I understand why people are for Trump more than I ever have. The other day we had on, just by coincidence, we didn't book them, 2 young black men, both live in Manhattan or live in New York City, both of whom explained extraordinarily well why they're for Trump and why they don't like the Democratic Party. And they were listened to respectfully, and liberals could ask them questions. That just doesn't exist anywhere else.
No, it doesn't.
So
I got to say that's consistent with my personal experience of black men specifically. Yeah. Not that I'm around black men all the time, but actually fairly regularly.
Yeah.
Don't know that many black men who are Republicans, but I know 0 black men who are liberals.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I met one.
Yeah.
Is that seems like a trend.
If the anecdotal is even close to true, Trump will break the record among support from black men. I mean, he'll smash it if the anecdotal is close to true. It's all over social media. It's all over my platform. It's all over every story I hear. And part of it, I'll give you a couple of elements of this that I think is important. Part of it is Trump has always had appeal with kind of a macho, rich, pretty wife thing.
Yeah.
Has that. But it's also, this example of biased coverage. The press says when Trump says some young black men identify with him and their parents because he's been persecuted, the press says that's racist. My experience is just true. They get the fact that the legal system comes after people unfairly. And if it can happen to Trump, it can happen to them. And it has happened to them and their family and their communities. And then lastly, the failure of liberals to make life in cities for poor kids better is also a massive scandal. Another scandal is that the Republican Party hasn't done anything to capitalize on it and create competition to be mayors of these cities.
For sure.
But when Trump says, I'm for criminal justice reform and I'm for fixing schools and I'm for creating more economic opportunity, he did criminal justice reform. The other stuff, his record is spotty, but he's saying, as he said in 2016 when people mocked him, what do you have to lose? These young black men say, the Democratic Party offers nothing to me. Trump might offer something to me, and he's done criminal justice reform. I think again, you could be the most partisan Democrat in the world. If you can defend the performance of the Democratic Party to helping young black men, good luck.
But I agree with everything that you've said, but what's interesting is that black voters, including black men, are not just like part of the Democratic coalition. They're the basis of the party's moral authority.
After black women, they're number 2 in terms of degree of support.
Right. But in terms of the story that Democrats tell themselves about 100%. Why they're right and why they're better than their opponents, it's all about black people.
Yep.
We've saved black people.
Yep.
And so how do they, what's it like if you're a Democratic Party, if you're Ron Klain and you all of a sudden all the black guys are against you and for Trump? That must be mind-blowing.
Well, of all the sort of canary in the coal mine of those who believe, as some of my sources in both parties do, that Harris is about to lose and maybe somewhat decisively, she's spending 3 days, maybe 4 days at the end of the campaign, spending the majority of her time courting black men. That's mind-blowing. So what do they say? They say, they're a little bit in denial about the causes of it, but they're not in denial about how big a problem is. Again, testament to, when have you seen a Democratic presidential candidate with 20 days to go spending her time day after day courting black men?
But it's just weird because the one thing that everyone on planet Earth knew about Donald Trump was that he was a racist. That's the one. I mean, that line. That was the summary of Trump. So
I had a black woman who's lives in New York also, who came on my platform the other day, and when she was confronted, I connected her to an older black gentleman who's a Harris supporter, and he said, "How can you support the man who led the birther movement? How can you support the man who denied knowing who David Duke was?" And she said, "How about Joe Biden? He's of that generation too, hanging around with Strom Thurmond, supporting the crime bill." You know, her view was Joe Biden's got a racist past too. I'm not going to decide who to vote for based on allegations about who's a bigger racist.
It's just interesting, of all the candidates in the history of American politics, for Donald Trump to increase the share of the black vote
and the Hispanic vote.
Well, big time in that way.
And again, the liberal press would say, how could Hispanics support a guy who's been so racist in his rhetoric about the border? And of course, as you know, we're talking about people who came here illegally and don't like to be lumped in with people who who support more open border, and
or even people who came here legally and benefit illegally,
correct,
who benefit from the 86 amnesty, for example.
Correct. And also people who think bacon costs too much.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Amazing. So why did you said at the outset that everyone's telling us this is going to be an extraordinarily close election. You don't believe that?
Well, it might be. I just think it's not a foregone conclusion, because I think 7 battleground states, 6 or maybe all 7 could go to one candidate. They could. In other words, if one of them wins the 7 states or 6 of 7 narrowly, by our recent standards, that would be an electoral college landslide. And I think that could happen. I think whatever dynamics exist, well, there'll be some variation state to state. But if Trump won all 7, I wouldn't be surprised. If she won all 7, I wouldn't be surprised. And if that happens, it's not going to be close.
I was talking to a member of Congress just a few hours ago who said, I'm totally convinced this election will not be called within a week of Election Day.
Will not be.
Not be.
Yeah. I mean, if it's close, it won't be. There'll be litigation, and there'll be, all the normal second guessing. Our elections are decentralized and really messy. And although there were efforts to fix that after 2000, it's just the American way. And in some of these states, like in Pennsylvania, the state gives incredible deference to the counties to figure out how they want to run things.
It's a commonwealth.
Yeah. And I think there's a real equal protection questions. We saw that in Florida in 2000. Like, is it fair to one county compared to another county, or the state of Florida compared to the other states, that they count differently? It's got political implications that are messy, but it's a great 10th Amendment question.
So in what sense do they count differently?
When you can start counting different types of ballots and what the rules are for accepting ballots that have errors in them. Like if one county says, well, they said 2023, but they meant 2024, we're going to count that because we know who cares what the outside address is like. One county counts it and the other doesn't. Is that fair to the voters? That equal protection? And even if the rules aren't different, just as a matter of course, say, well, in this county, they stopped counting at midnight because the election supervisor said, we have too many votes to count, we're going to go home. And in this county, they kept counting. And so now, is there some chain of custody question in the county where the people went home and said they'll come back in at 9:00? We just don't have uniform rules. That's just the way America is. So, I mean, I would say my base case, unlike everybody else's, my base case is we'll know by the next day, because I think more likely than not, it won't be close. But if your person's right, a week would be delightful if it was only a week. Could be significantly longer. Because once litigation starts, it never stops. And this time, the Democrats are as lawyered up as the Republicans. In 2020, the Bush campaign said, we're only going to do Florida. I'm sorry, in 2000. They said, we're only going to do Florida. We think there's stuff in New Mexico we could do. There's stuff in a few other states. They said, no, and the Gore people went along with that. That won't happen this time. All 7 states will be litigated if the
and to recap, those states are
the states. They're the 3 Great Lakes states: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and then the 4 Sunbelt states: Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, and the state where Las Vegas is that I can't pronounce correctly, so I never do.
It's Nevada,
like Vlad,
and it's Nevada. And in the last, say, 30 years, I grew up going to Nevada.
Yeah.
And we had a house in Nevada, and everyone called it that. And now they will yell at you for calling it that. They've renamed it. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.